I want you guys to go on a journey with me. We're going to go back to 1996. I was 15 years old, and my family had purchased a frozen yogurt shop in Virginia Beach. Now, I grew up in Pittsburgh, we moved to Virginia Beach, and my family always was into being an entrepreneur and into exploring opportunities, and let's face it, who doesn't like ice cream? But when I was 15, especially in 1996, when they told me we were buying a frozen yogurt shop, I was pissed. Because I like ice cream, not yogurt. And back then, the concept of frozen yogurt wasn't even a thing. And I can just put this in context. You'll see a picture of me serving the yogurt. For those that have seen that, that's the old school. Now we go in and get yogurt where we get a cup and it's self-serve. But for me, growing up, this was something that I was able to do. And my parents employed me at 15 years old to manage this store. And to me at the time, I didn't realize what they were setting me up for and really the life lessons that existed in this. I hired and fired my friends before I was 16 years old. You know, drinking in the back on a slow day doesn't really work. But one of the things that was interesting about this time is our frozen yogurt shop was in a shopping center in Virginia Beach. You can see up here in this picture. And it was just in a normal shopping center. It was about 3.5 miles from my house in Virginia Beach. And I used to ride my bike after middle school or after high school to the yogurt shop. I would work that 3 to 6 shift. And then ride my bike home. And we had owned the yogurt shop for a couple years, and we took a lot of pride in it. And I know a lot now that I didn't know back then, but my dad's full-time business was a candy business, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And the yogurt shop my parents purchased for one main reason. They had 3 boys, and I was the oldest, and they didn't really trust me to figure out who are Brian's friends. How do we get to know him? Brian's not going to invite his friends over to his parents' place. And so they decided to purchase this yogurt shop for the simple reason of, we'll hire all of his friends, and then we have to get to know him. Every girlfriend I had, even my first wife, worked at the yogurt shop. Every girlfriend for both of my younger brothers worked at the yogurt shop. And at the time, to me, I didn't realize that, and I was like, wow, that's how we were able to afford things. And I really looked at it, and my dad likes to say, we owned the yogurt shop for 11 years. We lost money 9 of those 11 years. We broke even 2 of the years. But owning that yogurt shop, and I remember this day very clearly, my dad had come home and he said, I have some interesting news, and I'm going to update this to that day. And this is a picture of that map for the day. And he said, there's a company that's coming in, and it might impact our business. Now, you might not be able to see in the back on what that company is and how that map changed, so I'll make it easy for you. Not only did they come into our area, they purchased a plot in front of our yogurt shop on the same square footage. In the same parking lot, my family frozen yogurt shop now had a Dairy Queen in front of it. And I can tell you, for me at the time, I said, Dad, what are we going to do? We're going to be out of business in minutes. It's just not going to work. And I remember my dad being very calm and very, we're going to have to figure this out. I mean, he's like, I didn't think they would be able to do that. And unfortunately, at the time, ice cream and yogurt weren't categorized in the same category. Therefore, there wasn't a competition rule where we could actually push back. And so when I was talking to my dad and we were kind of having this discussion, I remember being very distraught. And because I wore the brand on my shoulder. I mean, my nickname in high school was Yogurt Boy. I admit that now. I sure as hell would not admit it like after high school, because that was one that had many different connotations that I didn't want to play with. But for me, I was devastated. I was like, Dad, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why are you not upset? And my mom was running this business. And like, how did we not make this work for us? And there was this picture here of my dad and I when we were in Pittsburgh. And it was always hung inside the yogurt shop right when we came in. And this is a yogurt shop in Virginia Beach, of course, nowhere close to Pittsburgh. And it always confused me. I'm like, Dad, why do you have that picture up there of me when I was little with you? And then a picture of you wearing a Steelers helmet that was on the front page, or the season tickets of 1974 for the Steelers. It never made sense to me. And he told me something when the Dairy Queen conversation happened. He said, son, I'm not worried about Dairy Queen. I've built a community. I've connected. We've had baseball drafts. We've had all of the local community events, meetups at our frozen yogurt shop. For him, so much of what we had built was trust. So much of what he had built was a mom and pop shop that when you knew when you walked in there, it was a brother, it was one of my mom or dad, or it was a girlfriend or a best friend of ours. And my dad wasn't upset. And although those next years, it did take a little bit, Dairy Queen definitely took a hit, because as someone's driving by, the drive-by audience didn't there. But a year later, we decided to move the yogurt shop to Virginia Beach, to the ocean front, and we ended up being across from the ocean. And our business took off, and people followed us. They drove past 2 and 3 ice cream stores to go get yogurt from my parents' store. And at the time, I was like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. I don't understand, but it's that element where we connect with people that we can relate to. We connect with people that we feel like they have a passion for what they're doing. And this is a lesson that I wish I learned at the time. And I can tell you, my dad is definitely a big influence on me. This was me in the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl. Woo! And not only was he a big impact, but he's influenced a lot in my life. While at the same time, my dad is a candy business owner. He was a peanut brittle owner. And if you Google my name, there's 30 pages of Google results with my pictures. This is the one picture of my dad, and it's his LinkedIn profile picture. In 2009, I said, Dad, we really need to get email at your international peanut brittle company. And he was like, why? The phone still works, Brian. And he was watching me at the time, and I was doing a show on Google Hangouts. And my dad sent me a text message, and the text message simply said this: son, that social media thing that you're doing is really cool, and I'm proud of you, and I understand there's some value there, but I want you to think about it, and I want you to remember this, that nothing you do online, nothing you do on social media, no video you create will replace a handshake. Now, my dad texted me this. I'm on a live interview, and I'm interviewing someone, and I ended up reading it out loud. And as I'm reading it, the comments on the live feed are very interesting, because people are like, oh my God, Brian, like, how shocked are you? I can't believe it. That's where that little emoji face was. They were expecting me to feel that. But really what my reply back to my dad was, Dad, you were right. And this is a staple of what we've learned, especially all day yesterday here at this event, is that what we do online, what we do on video, what we do on social media will never replace a handshake. Will never replace that community feel. But I firmly believe by telling our story, putting ourselves out there, it'll give us the opportunity to have more handshakes. And my favorite thing, turn handshakes into hugs and selfies. I'm a millennial, I have to put selfies in there. But when you think about what we're doing in this digital space, part of our biggest gap that we are struggling with is that when I hear businesses, and I heard a lot of this yesterday, these success stories, and really what they've done is not anything new online. They finally figured out that we need to take what we do offline really, really well and move it online. We tell great stories, and I hear businesses all the time, Brian, if I can just get them in the store, we're going to be good to go. Brian, if you just get them one-on-one with me, consider it sold. Yet when you go to a website or you watch them on video, that dynamic, that isn't there. And social media and digital have definitely changed our world. And what I did was I went back and researched, and by research I mean searched my email, to find the emails that I got welcoming me to different social media networks. And so I was welcomed to MySpace in 2003. I was, LinkedIn and Facebook in 2007. And then 2009, I joined Twitter. And so for me, I wasn't born on social media. It wasn't something that existed for me. And kind of put that in context, I graduated college in 2003 from a small school in Virginia known as Radford. And I gave up my EDU address. And a couple of years later, this thing like Facebook came out. And I remember being so jealous of my younger brothers being able to have Facebook in college. Looking back, I'm very thankful Snapchat, Facebook didn't exist for me in college. But as we're looking at this and as we're looking at change, for me, this social media digital thing is still new. It's still something that oftentimes overwhelms me. Now, I like to caveat this here is, you might have seen, I don't know how many people can see from the back, but I have a pager on my hip here. And look, you know how long it's been since I pulled a pager out of my pocket? So this is a pager, and I like to consider myself a pager-wearing millennial. And what that really means is I was born in 1981. So I'm right on that cusp of the Pew Report of where that millennial generation is. And I give a lot of talks on cross-generational communication. The first job I ever had, I ended up having 32 direct reports working with me in the government, and the first 30 of them were older than I was. It was in cybersecurity. It was a field that no one was majoring at the time. But as a pager-wearing millennial, I still look at social media as a disruption and something different. And the reason I use the pager as an example is when someone says the word millennial, the first thing we often hear or think, well, not first, because we hear entitled, participation trophies, crybabies, stuck in their phone, we hear all of those things. But we also hear like born on Facebook, they love social media and technology, and that's not the case. But I will say I'm raising my 3 daughters, those are my 3 daughters there, and as you can see, my dad influenced me, I influenced them, so they're all wearing their Steeler jerseys, although this season we're going to get brand new ones for obvious reasons. But I firmly believe this, and I'm going to walk you through why I believe this and how I figured this to me, is I believe we are living in the greatest time in history. Now that's hard for me to say after some recent events that have been hitting the United States over the last 10 days or so. But when I look at this, and when I look at how my life has changed, and the businesses that I've changed, and the stories that I heard yesterday in this room, it is about great people and great businesses doing great things and getting rewarded for it. The old days, or the old adage that said, I'm going to let my work do the talking for me, are over. Right now, we have 2 things to deal with mainly. We have fake news and bad news. And if you are waiting to let your work do the talking for you, you will be the exhaust. Nobody will know what you do. And as you can imagine, my dad was that guy. My dad told me over and over again, son, I'm gonna let my work do the talking for me. Now, as I told you, I kind of joined social media the early 2000s, and I was working in cybersecurity for a company called BAE Systems. And I was very lucky. I got to travel the world and deploy cybersecurity tools. And I can tell you, if you in your company right now are worried about how do I collaborate with those Gen Zs, or how do I work with sales if I'm in marketing, my job in the Department of Defense was to deploy cybersecurity tools and then get the Army to share their policies with the Navy. My collaboration job was harder than yours. And through that time, I had no military background. I was the 1% of the 99% of people in my company that were ex-military, and I took great pride in that. And these are pictures from me in Iraq and Afghanistan. I actually went to Iraq twice, Afghanistan 3 times, as a contractor supporting our military, deploying solutions. I've been to the Middle East a little over 60 times myself, usually at a week or 2 at a time. And as I would travel and as I would work with the active duty military, even though I grew up in Virginia Beach where there was a military presence, I was inspired. I was inspired by the dedication. I was inspired by the commitment to mission. I was inspired by the stories that I would sit out by these picnic tables, and these young kids would come back from a rhino ride over the mountains in Afghanistan and sit there across from me and tell me what inspired them to join the military, what inspired them to sacrifice their lives. And real quick, we get a round of applause for the military and those that are out there, right? And so after my first trip to Iraq, and I came back and I was working with this BAE Systems, and I was running this giant company, and I went to my boss and said, you know what? I want to blog. I want to write. I think this writing, I want to write the stories of what I'm able to do. I mean, we're hiring 32 employees. I have 100 total people on my team. We're running a $19 million a year budget for the DoD, deploying tools that we had never done before. I got to work with all branches of the military, got to be in the Pentagon during some of those dramatic years as things were coming in and out without us knowing. And one of the things that kind of hit me, and it was an interesting time, is I said, you know what? I want to share the story of the military. I want to tell these things that were going on, and I just want to give a little context to that. And you guys can see that this is a little older. Is anyone know what hosting site that is that's on there? That's Blogspot. Everybody remember that? So I was actually in Kuwait one of the times, and I decided, you know what? I'm just going to start blogging on Blogspot. And blogging to me was weird, and the context of that is I was not a great student, but I had perfect attendance. I loved school except for the classroom. College was amazing. I was president of my fraternity, assistant captain of my ice hockey team. I was a computer science major, yet it was the hardest thing for me to just even get C's to get out of school. School was a massive struggle for me, and so writing was oftentimes the thing that held me back the most. But I had this, I was just like, I want to share this. And so I would write some things down, and I would talk to people, and they would say, Brian, you're traveling to the Middle East. You love all the things going on. What is your favorite country you've ever visited? Now, I can tell you, when I left the government, I had been to 60-some countries. I've now been to 76 countries, with my goal of hitting 100 before I turn 40. So I have 24 to go in a little over 2 years. So I got to put the pedal to the metal. But when someone asks me what's my favorite country I've ever visited, I say Bahrain. Now, during this presentation, I used to talk about that, and the number one question I would get afterwards was not about my talk, but where in the hell is Bahrain? So I got you a map. And that's Bahrain. And it's a little country off the coast of Saudi Arabia. And I was very lucky. There's a Navy base there. And I got to work there many times. And I would come home and tell these stories to my parents and to my family about my love for the Middle East. The culture, the people, giving and compelling. And they not only were they giving, but they welcomed me with open arms, because this is kind of how I've always dressed. And what that really means is I stick out like the ignorant American no matter where I'm at. Even in Australia, they're like, yep, I know. Yeah, this is how it works. And for me, there was just this element of this story and this world that I was so inspired by. And yet I was hearing the news and the media about the Middle East and terrorism and all these things that were being linked, and I really wanted to share this story out. And so I wrote a couple blogs and gave them to my boss. And my boss simply said this little message. He said, sorry, Brian, I love that you want to blog or write for us, but you write like you talk. You share experiences unfiltered. You're telling stories that are the opposite of what everybody's used to hearing. It's really great that you want to do that, but stick with your blogspot thing. Now, that was the 5th floor of an office building in Herndon, Virginia. And I remember taking the elevator down to the 3rd floor as if someone kicked me in the gut. I had a story to tell. It wasn't my story. It was the stories that I had learned in the Middle East. It was working with the military as a guy that was never in the military. It was being able to connect with these people that I believe the story was not being told. But this person, this manager, who now is funny enough one of my biggest fans of my podcasts, he said, he kicked me down and said, this isn't right for you. And honestly, writing was never been my thing. And if there's some grammar mistakes up here, I did my own slides, so be prepared for that. And for me, growing up, I've always kind of walked the same route. So this is me, as a little boy. And of course, I'm the one that's doing this down below. My mom likes to say I came out of the womb talking, which is why I talk so fast. I just have a couple years on a lot of people. And for me, I've always walked and talked and did my thing my way and kind of lived my way of not only kind of operating, but sharing my story and putting things out there. And there's no bigger evidence than this than looking at my YouTube channel. Now, this is really going to excite you guys, but 5 years ago, these are the 4 videos that were on my YouTube channel. So I'm oftentimes referred to as a video guy. I've done 4,000 live videos since 2014. I've launched live video programs for numerous Fortune 50 brands. But 5 years ago, video scared the crap out of me. I thought writing was bad. Video on YouTube? Like, hold on. My dream was to be a SportsCenter newscaster. And when I clicked the button and watched myself on video, I was so far from being Dan Patrick that it was like, oh, delete, right? I didn't want that. Even to the point where YouTube scared me enough that I didn't even want to post my videos because you had to SEO them, and you put hashtags, and you had to find search terms, and there was all of this element of video that really scared me. And funny enough, the most popular video I've had on my YouTube channel for the longest time was this one video that I took, and it happened to be in Iraq. And a little bit of context to this video that I'm going to show you real quick, and by real quick, don't blink, is I took this on the very first international BlackBerry. When I was deployed, when I went over there the first couple of times, I had to use a card. And so this time I was actually given an international BlackBerry. And one of the people that were working there, I didn't realize at the time, playing games with me. And he said, Brian, you should take out your phone and video this. Yeah, did you guys see that? Okay, that's a CRAM. And if you want to feel like an earthquake and you want to be that close, I dropped my international BlackBerry and cracked it. Thankfully, there was a SIM card that I put in and I uploaded it to YouTube, and that was my video. So when you look 5 years ago, that's the video gold. So for everyone that's out there and you're like, how do I create video? Where do I start? That's where I started. And that's what I considered good video. And it wasn't until later on, it wasn't really until November 2nd, 2013, that everything changed for me. Now, I explained to you guys the influence of my dad, but really, I'm a mama's boy. Proud mama's boy. And my mom has always been the one that I've got from her that I want to please everyone. And I enjoy making people happy. And if I didn't have to worry about making money to do what I do, I'd be doing the same thing I'm doing now. And a lot of that has to do with my mom. And my mom sent me an email on November 2nd, 2013. And it just simply said, son, I hope you're enjoying everything you're doing with social media. I love that you're starting to put things out there. I'm just concerned that you aren't doing what you've always done in life. And she said, one of the things that made you unique in high school, you were a thespian, you played baseball, you worked at a frozen yogurt shop, you were a DJ at a skating rink. Yeah, DJ at a skating rink. That's how I got the girls. But my mom said the one thing that you embraced always was you were unapologetically yourself. You never wavered. And she said, when I look at your profile pictures, I don't see your hat. When I look at your videos, I don't see you talking with your hands. I am Italian. It's kind of something I can't prevent. And my mom just simply said, Brian, I just hope that you're the same person offline as you're trying to portray online. And I took that chance. I took a Sharpie, I remember. Don't do this with a Sharpie. Use like a marker that actually erased. And I walked into my bathroom, my master bathroom, and I wrote in giant letters, be yourself. I didn't use the hashtag because I wasn't talking like I tweet at the time. But I wrote, be yourself. And I can tell you that moment changed everything for me and the brands that I've worked with. Because what happened over that next couple years is that I was starting to work with brands as an influencer. I started working with IBM and Dell and Samsung, really as a technology influencer, someone sharing stories around technology. And I was in Barcelona at an event called Mobile World Congress. It's an event bigger than CES and South by Southwest. It's an insane event. And I was there working with Dell, and we were there recording a live podcast at the time because we had launched my very first podcast. And this app came out, and I had a text message from a friend that worked at Twitter, and he said, Brian, there's a new app called Meerkat that Ashton Kutcher and Gary Vaynerchuk are using. You should check it out. Now, my first reply was, however he connected Ashton Kutcher and Gary Vaynerchuk to me was like, I'm winning. I don't even know what and then I realized he wasn't really into social. He was one of the data scientists there. But that moment, everything changed. And this picture to me is a really interesting one because I was there working for Dell. And I was working for Dell, and I was doing video content where I walked around or had somebody walking around, and we were creating video of the experience of Mobile World Congress. And when I downloaded this app, and it simply came up my phone, and it said, type something or press live. I pressed live. And if you guys haven't done a live video before, the very first shot of everyone's first live video is your feet. Because you take it out, and you click live, and you don't realize that the back camera is the first one on. So quickly you're like, how do I change this around? And so I changed it around, I flipped the screen around, and this Dell booth is where I walked out of, and I had the camera facing out. And this one gentleman, Gary from Indiana, was my first viewer and only viewer of this live feed that had no title because I didn't realize that was what that space was for. And he simply put in the comments, Brian, is that the new Motorola booth? Can you go show me the new Motorola phone? I had spent 4 days at this event creating content, sharing video, and not once went over to that phone. I was creating content for what I thought I would want to consume, not what my audience wanted to consume. The light bulb for me on the power of real-time video and connecting with people in this social video landscape went on right there. Now, the bad news of this story, I walked 5 feet, Wi-Fi dropped, signal dropped, the live stream ended. Gary from Indiana disabled his account about 3 weeks later, and he has no idea that he gets talked about on stages around the world. But that moment changed everything for me because I was able to mirror what my dad taught me about community and connecting with what my mom was telling me about be yourself and put yourself out there. I started to live stream very often, and looking back, way too often, sometimes 4 to 5 times a day, sharing my thoughts on different topics. When Meerkat hit 4 million users, Jimmy Fallon was number 1, Gary Vaynerchuk was number 2, and I was number 3. Just some advice, if you're gonna pick 15 minutes of fame on an app, don't pick one that dies after the first year. For everyone that has no idea what Meerkat is, don't worry about it. Most people didn't even back then. But what I kind of learned and how this all kind of connected for me is it allowed me to understand I had a story to tell and a vehicle that matched who I was and my personality. It allowed me to start doing things in such cool ways. And this is a fun tweet because I wanted to put that one up there. This is 2014, right? If you remember, November of 2013 is when I got the epiphany. I decided to create a live show on Google Hangouts and invite this guy named David Meerman Scott, who happened to be our closing keynote yesterday. He was a big shot with all these, and he said yes. So as soon as he said yes, I was like, crap, now I have to read his books, because I knew he was big. And I got to interview him, and I got to connect, and we did his Google Hangouts show every week. I connected and used an app called Blab, for those that remember Blab. Blab was another one of those live streaming apps that was around for a year. And I was able to work on Blab, and I was doing live shows, and I got a message from the CEO, and they were like, we want you to jump on a live show now. We're going to have a special guest. And this guy, you might have heard of him, Tony Robbins, jumped on screen next to me and allowed me to interview him on digital technology using video. 5 years ago, I had 4 videos on my YouTube channel, one which you saw. Video scared me. Video wasn't my element. But as I started putting myself out there, as I started embracing this idea of being who I was offline, online, things started to happen. And not only did they start to happen, but I started to get comfortable. Now, I will tell you, I think we've all heard this many times, is that when you start on video, it's not very good. And I will say, like, one of the interesting things for me is I still can't watch myself on video. I actually have a team that I send my speaking videos to, and even my videos for my clients to do the editing, because I just get I just like, Brian, slow down. You're spitting. Why drink some water? Why are you? I'm just my own worst critic. But what this enabled me to do is start to figure out how to put myself out there and really do what I was doing great offline. And as I said before, I believe we're living in the greatest time in history. I got to work at the Super Bowl, one of the dreams for me. I got to live stream 20 hours at Super Bowl 50. Now, it was outside, and I didn't realize it was going to be cold in San Francisco that year. But we got to live stream and interview people at the Super Bowl. I've been able to take over accounts, launch 3 podcasts, and work with all of these different brands. And the interesting thing is, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't remember that day when they told me, Brian, you write like you talk. You share too many stories. You care too much about the experience and what the customer wants. Because in those times, we sold and marketed. We were disconnected. But if we look and fast forward to today, the brands that were successful yesterday on this stage, every one of those use cases were because they put themselves out there. They told the story, they shared and connected with people at a deeper level. Not only does this work for brands and small businesses, but I've had the luxury of working with some of the largest companies in the world, launching their first Facebook Live, their very first Instagram takeover. I've been able to do things, launching these companies around the world, leveraging video. And one of the coolest things for me with working with these brands and these companies around the world is that when I help them use video and start to tell their story, it's a lot of the feeling that you guys heard yesterday. I'll hear things like, wait, it was that easy? Like, Brian, why is the video where the realest and we say the most successful video? And it's because of that connection, right? And it's because we are really looking for that at a different level. Now, I want to break down a couple of the most popular questions that I get right now before I give you some of these recipes for success. And the reason I did this is because I know I talk fast, and I know some of you in the audience right now have heard a lot about video, and you're like, well, how does this work for me? Right? And you're going to ask me questions, or you're going to ask, different. You're going to kind of embrace the questions that are out there, and you're going to say, well, where do I start? Like, where should I start? And so here's my advice for starting on video. Start where you are most comfortable. And what I mean by that, don't go to where your customers are and create a video. Start where you're most comfortable. If you are not comfortable on video, this is my recommendation for you. I want you to FaceTime with your family 5 times over the next week. If you don't have an iPhone, you can do like Facebook Messenger video. Sorry, Android users. But what I mean by that is you have to start getting used to looking at yourself in the camera. It's weird. And for the most part, you can be like, why am I showing my nose hairs? And then you're going to realize you want to put the camera up a little bit. And then you're going to be like, oh my goodness, my hand's over the microphone. But you're starting to get used to that and kind of starting where you're most comfortable. Because one of the roadblocks for video, and I heard it on stage yesterday, was, well, I have a face for radio. Breaking news, most of us have a face for radio, and we don't like ourselves on video. But if you don't start, you'll never figure out what works for you. Doing things like interviewing other people. And so when I look at brands, and for me, my big start was pressing the button on a live video and happening to have a podcast. I can without hesitation say that if I hadn't started my podcast, I would have been so held up from that manager of mine telling me that I was not good enough to write that I might have never, ever pressed the button. I would have never used video. But because I started telling my story in a format that really fit me, I was able to connect and doing some of these things, and it really worked well for me. The second one, which is always a great one, I'm sure, Zach, we're used to this one a lot. What's the perfect length? The perfect length is when you add value and then you get the hell off when you're done adding value. The old adage, and we've heard this a lot, and I think even Marcus might have mentioned it here on stage, the idea that today's audience has the attention span of a goldfish, complete bullshit. Anyone here binge watch anything on Netflix? It's not that we have a no attention span. Here's what we do have. We have no time for crappy content. We have no time for you to waste our time. We have no time for you to give us a fake video. And one of my favorite things, I got to work with a couple companies. They said, Brian, we embraced video. And it was Zach's favorite kind of video, which he said is usually the one that gets asked the most, the About Us page. And it was a very large company, and I've been told not to mention the company, so I will leave it with, it starts with an I and ends with a BM. And it was one of their departments, and the video was on their About page, and they were excited to show me. And it was a gentleman talking to the screen, and there was a beautiful waterfall underneath, and they switched between 4 other people. And then on a little small scroll across the bottom, it said, "These people are not employees, they are actors." I cried, like, deep inside. Because that was the idea of video, because their answer was, well, Brian, what if those employees that we have the video of leave? Like, we're going to have to do another video. Correct? But the idea that we say, trust us, this is our company, we're amazing to work for, we want to put actors to tell our story. And so when I say that, the perfect length is a length that matters, and every platform is different. The reason I love Instagram is it's the only platform in the world you can guarantee 99% of your audience is consuming on a mobile device. Most of us didn't even realize Instagram.com was a thing. But for the most part, on all of the other channels, from LinkedIn video to Facebook Live to Twitter video to YouTube to Vimeo to Twitch to TikTok, any of those that are out there, well, TikTok's a mobile one as well, you have to start thinking about the platform. And what I like to tell people is not only is every platform different, but the way people consume is different on every platform. So you have to start thinking about your audience. And what I mean by that is, don't say, okay, this is LinkedIn, it needs to be business professional. Breaking news, people don't do business with your business side of your life. They do business with you as a person, right? We've heard these old adages before. And so what you have to start thinking about is, okay, when does my LinkedIn audience that I'm trying to reach get online? And then if they're on LinkedIn, what the hell are they looking for? Most of the time, they're either scrolling for a job or they're trying to hire somebody. And for those that didn't realize, LinkedIn is a content hub now. And you can find your password. I know you haven't logged in a long time because we look for a job and we look to hire people there. But it allows you to upload video. It's a massive content hub. And I'm so bullish on LinkedIn that I went all in last year doing 1 video a week, custom for LinkedIn, driving 60% of my revenue of closed leads was LinkedIn video. Under 10 minutes long, directed for that audience. But when you think about the platform, I don't want you to think about the platform first. What I want you to think about is, what does success of this video look like, and who are the people I'm trying to reach, right? And that's where we have to start thinking about this in video. And then the last but not least one is always a fun one, because when it comes to video, one of the things that we are all very, really good at is making excuses, right? I was going to do video, but I need to wait to get my hair done. And then you get your hair done, and you're like, well, now I need to wait till I get a tan. And then we're like, well, we get a tan, and now you're like, man, I shaved my head too short. It's gonna be, there's gonna be a brightness off of it. I can't go live. I can't do the video today. Then you're gonna go in, and you're gonna be like, oh, this color's not gonna look good. So you will literally just keep bouncing it down. And on live video, it's the best, because live video, they say, you know what, Brian, I was gonna go live, but in 3 hours from now, I had a webinar that I needed to do. And what if my first live video went viral and everyone watched it and I'd missed my webinar? So I didn't go live 6 months ago, and I'm excited to talk to you, right? And so when I look at this and when I look at all of these questions, the interesting thing about all of this is that when we're looking at video, and we've heard so many great use cases here, and this is a fun audience to talk about video, the thing that is most important when you're looking at video is understanding the value of pressing the damn button. And what I mean by that is you will not know what works, you will not know your style, the walking and talking, you will not know how to make these things work for you until you start using it. Now the question you might have is, okay, well Brian, now I understand the power of video, I understand I need to click the button. Where do I go from here? Like, where do I take this? And the fun part is this is a slide that I usually put up, and I'm the first one to mention this word at an event. If we had put this word up there yesterday and played the drinking game, everyone would have been drunk. Drink every time you heard the word trust. But for me, this is a massive shift and so powerful. And I've been very blessed. Marcus has been an influence of mine since I first saw him speak in 2013. He's the only person in my life that has made me cry and get goosebumps in the same 5-minute segment watching him speak. And that minute, I told him, I want to do this. I want to do what you do. I want to tell stories from the heart. I want to connect. And I want to build trust the way that you build trust. Now, interestingly enough, Marcus and I have different opinions when it comes to social media and digital and how we put ourselves out there. But when we can agree on something, I think we can all agree on it based on this event. You are not in the business to market or to sell. People do not buy your product or service. They buy who you are and your ability to build trust. I will make the argument that building trust is easier than maintaining and scaling trust. And if you are trying to scale trust and maintain trust in a digital world, the best way to do it is allow people to look you in your digital eyeballs. Because as I said, we have fake news and we have bad news. We have unicorns and rainbows and bullshit online. People have been able to put on anything they wanted online to where today's consumers don't trust what they read. They trust the person that is putting the content out there. Now, we might have to argue on why we trust some of our friends, and I think we're learning that lesson across the board right now. But when we look at trust and we look at moving forward when it comes to video, this is one I want you to remember. I was raised, my dad always told me, son, people buy from people they like. I will make the argument that influencer marketing, employee advocacy, the idea of sharing reviews and testimonials, as Stephanie talked about yesterday, the reason those work today is because we trust people that can relate to us. As I said, I'm a dad of 3 girls. My girlfriend has a daughter as well, so I have 4 daughters. My youngest, the 2-year-old, actually, her birthday's today, so happy birthday, Zara. And the interesting thing as a dad, and I wanted to buy a new vehicle, does anyone here believe that Matthew McConaughey drives a Lincoln? Or LeBron James drives a Kia? And in this day and age, if I'm looking to buy a vehicle, the last thing I'm going to do is trust LeBron James and Matthew McConaughey to understand what it's like to have Cheerios in the back seat. Or what I discovered in my brand new Jeep was a smell that I could not find, and it took 3 days, and it was a nice yogurt drink in the back seat. Oh, see, all the parents are like, yep. Everyone else is called birth control. But if we think about it, the reason YouTubers are successful, the reason influencer marketing is powerful, the reason this room is telling you put yourself out there is because we want to connect with people that get us, that can solve our problems, that can relate to the problems that we have. And there is no greater vehicle to do that than video. But I will tell you, being relatable online is scary and hard. Because when you put it out there, you're like, what are people going to say? And I can tell you, I remember it was around Christmas time of that 2013, and I posted on Instagram, and I shared that I had tattoos. And I have my daughter's name on my chest. I have a sleeve tattoo. And I put it out there, and I remember being like, man, I've never talked about my tattoos. I've never put it out there. And I lost 2 clients that month. One that mentioned the tattoos, the other one that just mentioned they no longer agreed with my philosophy on life. I wasn't in a place to lose a client. It wasn't something I was comfortable with. But there is something to be said about working with clients and people that like you for who you are and connect. But there's also something to be said about putting yourself out there in a way that is authentic. And the word authentic is thrown around a lot of times. I loved Ryan's presentation yesterday on the importance of authority and understanding that your brand is not a brand without authority, and understanding kind of that difference of authority and followers. But when we look at this and we're looking at this scary online world, There are haters. There are people that are going to bash you. I got to take over Applebee's.com for a 12-hour live streaming show on Applebee's.com 2 years ago. And it was amazing. We had so much fun. We sent 20 different influencers to 20 different Applebee's, and they live streamed their experience and sent it back to us at Applebee's.com. And we were live streaming it out there, which is a little crazy. And interestingly enough, about halfway through, we started getting these messages, and we looked down, and it was Ruby Tuesdays. The poor social media manager for Ruby Tuesdays didn't realize they had logged into their corporate account, not their personal account. For Applebee's, they took that as a giant win, right? That was huge. But what I want to tell you about transparency in this day and age now is that if we're scared of bullies and we're scared of the haters, our way of getting over that is owning who we are and what we're about. I was diagnosed ADHD at 31 years old. It changed my life. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. It allowed me to identify with who I was, the way that I learned differently. I told you that I was really bad in school. I've read more books in 6 years than I did in the first 31 years of my life. It allowed me to discover who I was, what I was about. It allowed me to understand my weaknesses, my strengths, how I work, being able to increase my productivity. But when I started putting that out there, the comments went from, slow down, Brian, squirrel, why are you all over the place, to, hey, Brian, I can relate with that. I have a brother or a friend. Hey, I'm going through something too. I appreciate you putting it out there. When we look at the society we're in right now and where we're moving forward, transparency disarms the bullies, the haters, the people you're scared about. Because if you own who you are and what you are about, they have nothing to fire at you. And this is amazing because as we start putting video and we start doing some great things, I do believe everyone in this room has a story to tell. I believe every one of us should be putting our story out there. And it might not be on video, it might be audio, it might be a blog, but we need to start putting ourselves out there. But until we allow this transparency to be part of our life, it becomes very difficult. Now, I will caveat, transparency does not guarantee trust. I will say this, and I don't think anyone in the room has to worry about it. But if you suck offline, you will suck online. You will suck on video. So if you suck, be someone different. If you don't suck, be transparent. Tell your story. Because what transparency does is it gives an authentic window into who you are, allowing people to decide if you are trustworthy or not. And that is extremely important in this new day and age. But if you're trying to be transparent, you're trying to be relatable, you're trying to put yourself out there, this is my golden rule. Perfection is a fairy tale. Does anyone in this room know of a brand that is perfect? Don't say your own, it doesn't count. All right, brand is a hard one. Does anyone in this room know of a leader or someone that you look up to that is perfect? Taylor Swift and Jesus. Last week I got Ryan Reynolds and The Rock. Sometimes I get Mother Teresa. But all joking aside, if we don't look at any brand or business or leader as perfect, why in the hell are we trying to create a perfect video, a perfect blog post, a perfect photo on Instagram? Perfection is that roadblock for us telling our story. And when you start realizing that perfection is a fairy tale spelled wrong on purpose on my slide, for all those that are like, what is he doing? Perfection is a fairy tale, and if you can embrace this, write it down on a sticky note, put it on your desk. Remember that we're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to put ourselves out there. And for too often, for too many people, one of the biggest roadblocks for this is we're trying to put ourselves out there, and we're excited, but it takes too long to be perfect. And in this world we're living in now, real-time content is easy. Putting content out at the right time changes your business. And the right time is not something you dictate, it's something your audience dictates. And as we look at this and as we kind of pull all of this together, I want you guys to think about this. And it's really important to me, this is in my opinion, my life's work, is we are living in tough times at the moment. There are a lot of bad news and fake news, especially in the last 10 days, that breaks our heart, that is tough for us to consume. But I also believe as a society, as a people, as business owners, we all have great stories to tell. We all are doing some amazing things. We know great people around us. Yet, oddly enough, we spend a majority of our time talking about the hate and the bad news, and we're sharing videos of tragedies rather than sharing and celebrating videos of those around us. My soapbox and my belief is that as we start moving forward, we start embracing this idea of be yourself, We're going to start shrinking the gap between online and our audience. If we start being ourselves and putting ourselves in this space and allowing people to have this one word, and this word is one of the most important words you'll hear from me this entire time, and the word is access. I think Zach did a great job yesterday painting the pictures of the type of videos that you need to create. And one of the things that you're going to see in each one of those types is access. We crave access to who you are, why you do, what your business is about. Your audience doesn't want you to tell us, don't sell us, don't market us, because guess what? Today's consumers are smart. We see through an ad. We understand that your white paper disguised as a blog post is really a white paper. Right? We know the difference between submitting our email address and submitting that Yahoo email address that we haven't logged into in 50 years. I know, see, we've all done that. And so give people access to who you are, what you're about, and allow them to experience that at a deeper level. Because as we move forward, as we look at this, and as this kind of movement is happening, I believe in a concept called digital empathy. I truly believe that the suicide rate should be going down. I believe the great local businesses and local towns should be celebrated in every city. And I believe for us to do that, it first requires us to tell our story. We cannot be empathetic for others until we allow people to be empathetic for us. We cannot break through the bad news and the fake news until we start putting ourselves out there, amplifying the good that is around us, and showing that we care. My challenge to everyone in this room is to think about the businesses and the people in your life that are doing good things. And ask yourself, do you spend more time talking about them and amplifying them and sharing them, or do you spend more time on the others? If you're looking for a great video to create, interview people in your community that are changing lives. Interview people that are making a difference. That's the content we're going to watch. That's how you build that trust with the businesses and the brands that you're looking for. That's how we move the needle and we show that we care. And last but not least, you guys got a lot of information. And I get to travel around to 60-plus events a year, which is extremely exciting. I'm doing something that I love. I will never want to do anything else in my rest of my life. But one of the things that's the thing that tears my heart out the most is I will leave this event, and I will come back a year from now, and people will say, Brian, I was inspired. Brian, I was motivated. Video is it. I was so excited. So I took the notes, and I got back to work, and I talked to my boss, and he wasn't okay with it. And then we decided we were going to do it next month, and then we came here this time with the same notes, and our goal is we're going to learn from you, and we're going to actually do it. What I'm telling you is that anyone can learn, everyone can say that you're inspired, but there's only very few that are going to make a difference. Everybody's story of success you heard on this stage yesterday, they did one thing, and they did one thing to start, and it's what happened after that. They pressed the damn button. I challenge everyone, take one piece of action from something you learned yesterday or today, write it down and own the fact that you will accomplish it. You will press the button, you will make it happen. Because all of this time you're spending, all these amazing things that you're learning are useless unless you press the button. My name is Brian Fanzo. Thank you guys very much.